Unbeknownst to most of the group, Jack had used message to communicate with his older self, and had used the time confusion of the vision to copy a couple new spells into his spellbook. When he found himself back in the sewer after the blinding flash of light, he double-checked his spellbook and found that the new spells were there. But some of his old spells were missing, almost as if he had these spells the entire time. As Kator and Jack looked around and saw the other members of their group, they felt a strange sense of déjà vu. Suddenly their memories are different, yet the same, almost as though they had two separate recollections of the same events. Kator remembers his first meeting with Jack and how a tall, slender elf thief had come out of the shadows to assist. But then he remembers the same scene unfolding with a short, busty hill dwarf running up to help and calling herself Elsa. Jack remembers the first time he had tried more than one charge on his frost wand. In the aftermath, they had found a tall, muscular half-orc in a sack. Jack concentrates on that memory, but it seems almost overtaken by a different picture. A young forest gnome girl was revealed as the cloth of the bag was torn away. Once they revealed where they were headed, she introduced herself as Robin Redhood and joined them. They each remember their difficult trek through the swamp to the frog temple, all out of their element and with no guide. Then they see a gnome named Nyx helping Kator guide the group through the safe sections of the mire, all the while holding a frog that was very different from the ones they had fought. When they concentrated on the image of the frog, they could almost see the friendliness in its eyes. Jack remembers being smacked by a pale half-orc, causing the group to get arrested outside of Azam's tower. But then he tries to picture the scene again, and he sees a moon elf wizard in the courtyard. Kator tries to remember the moments of the last few hours, picturing the fear on the faces of the goblins in the poop room. But as he does so, he notices something he didn't think was there. A brownie, frozen in fear, and he himself suggests they kill it out of mercy, but being convinced otherwise by the moon elf wizard, Perren. He remembers the small pixie-like man recovering from the shock and beginning to speak to the group, addressing them all as master and referring to himself as Dobby. He reaches up to his ears and notices they are longer than he remembers. He tries to picture his father, and for a moment he sees human features. Then they fade into the structure of a wood elf face. Distracted by this self-reflection, the pair do not hear the crocodiles sneak up behind them and attack, one grabbing Robin and attempting to pin her to the floor. Fighting breaks out, and the Pilgrims of Four work together as if they had been fighting on the same side for months. Robin escapes, and Kator quickly fells the crocodile that had attacked her. Jack freezes another, and Elsa crumples the skull of another with her ferocious punch. Perrin uses acid to deter a crocodile near him, but it still gets a hold of his arm. Robin shoots from across the room and kills the partially melted crocodile, accidentally piercing Perrin's forearm in the process. Kator shoots the frozen crocodile, shattering its face into tiny shards, then kills another that was about to bite him. Once the fighting is done, Nyx heals Perrin and makes sure everyone else is okay as well. Out of the silence, Jack says,
"It's okay to skin this."
Kator's eyes light up with enthusiasm
It's not sentient? Yay!
and brings out his knife. Perrin stays nearby and mends the puncture wounds from the crocodile skins once Kator gets them off the carcasses. Meanwhile, Robin went off exploring another room, and Jack followed far behind. Heavy crossbow bolts appear to shoot out of nowhere, but only glance off and inflict minor injuries. As more of the Pilgrims of Four enter into the room, crossbow bolts continue to shoot at them, but only when they are moving. Jack makes it to the far side of the room and magically knocks open a door, shouting for the others to follow him. Then he uses an unseen servant to scan the ceiling of the room for what could be shooting the bolts. To aid him, Robin runs in circles around the edge of the room, attempting to trigger the trap. Kator makes his way to the door and catches the glint of light on metal.
There, do you see it? Make your servant go back.
Kator says. Jack directs the unseen servant, but the spotlight is not in the right place.
No, up more, and to the left. There, on the wall, just at the ceiling. That's where the bolts are coming from. But how do we stop it?
Across the room, Perrin sees the spotlight on the wall and uses an acid spell to damage the trap. As Robin continues to run, the trap attempts to trigger once more, but the acidic corrosion is too much and the firing mechanism jams. Relieved, the Pilgrims of Four relax and Kator sketches out the room and attached hallways using his cartographer's kit. Once he's done, they steer away from the watery room and find an oddly dry and empty room, with a mosaic of a dragon painted on the floor. Near the mouth of the dragon, they can see a large grate leading down. As they attempt to approach silently, Robin forgets herself and hums a merry tune, skipping over to the edge of the grate. The noise attracts enemies, and suddenly 7 carrion crawlers drop down from the ceiling, their stubby legs moving them around at astonishing speed, and their gnashing teeth taking bites out of armor and flesh. Their slimy tentacles reach and grab at whatever they can. One of the monstrosities gets several tentacles down Elsa's shirt and into her bra, while 2 others get into Kator's pants, and another slimes Jack's face. Robin attempts to make it back to the group, but there are too many crawlers, and she makes a run for it, hoping to get enough distance to draw her bow. When a 3rd crawler surrounds Kator, the group take action to protect him, each casting spells and launching themselves into combat to protect the ranger. Throughout the melee, many of them get slimed and temporarily paralyzed, but the numbing effect seems to last only a few seconds. Nix, who had been petting his frog for the past hour, reaches into the mouth of one of the crawlers and slaps its tongue with his poisonous hand, but it has no effect, and he receives a vicious bite in return. As the brawl ramps up into a fever pitch, tentacles insert themselves into holes and creases of flesh wherever they can find them. Jack's mouth gets filled repeatedly, preventing him from sustaining his spells. Elsa's breasts don't get a second of dry air as the first crawler hangs onto them with a vice grip. Kator and Perrin have their buttholes penetrated. Although Perrin is freed after a moment, the crawlers surrounding Kator take turns stuffing their tentacles into him. Through the pain, paralysis, and discomfort, Elsa and Kator are able to get the first kills almost simultaneously. Elsa had targeted the one squeezing her reddening breasts, while Kator had opted for the crawler assaulting Perrin. Perrin attempts to return the favor by shooting a severed tentacle at high velocity, but it misses and impacts the wall by Kator's head with a loud thwack. Nix rushes around trying to heal and cure anyone who had been paralyzed, but there are too many injuries to mend one at a time. Thanks to Nix's efforts, Jack was able to breathe and cast Witch Bolt on one of the crawlers attacking Kator, making it pulse bright red and purple and throb for a few seconds before exploding in a rain of fleshy material. Meanwhile, Robin had gotten a few shallow insertions from behind as well, as she ran as fast as she could away from the crawler. Eventually, she had enough of a lead to quickly unlock a door, but the monstrosity was upon her and reaching down into her pants again before she could open it. Elsa charges into the crawler that had been chasing Robin, her fist smashing right through the side of its head and killing it instantly. At the same time, Perrin blasts one of Kator's assailants to death. Nix smacks a crawler as it attempts to reach into his pants, killing it before it got past his belt. Finally, out of melee combat, Robin stops running and shoots through the eye of the last crawler, trying to reach into Kator's pants. The monstrosity squeals and falls dead. Perrin asks Kator,
"Do you need a hug?"
The ranger puts his bow away and gently reaches a hand behind him. He winces and takes in a sharp breath.
Yes, and somewhere soft to lay down.
Perrin conjures an extra-dimensional dwelling for them to rest inside of, and the Pilgrims of Four sleep through the rest of the night. After a restful sleep, the Pilgrims of Four exit the extra-dimensional sanctuary and briefly discuss the morality of skinning dead animals. Kator admits that beyond the beasts of the swamp, forest, and mountains, he does not immediately recognize which creatures are sentient and which are not.
I can always rely on Jack to let me know when something is not acceptable to skin or harvest materials from. Other than that, I take mostly furs, claws, teeth, hide, sometimes organs or glands, and meat if my rations are running low. Anything I don't take is food for the small creatures or the soil.
If we're ever in my homeland, across the sea, I can tell you right now nothing is acceptable to harvest. All the creatures there are altered by magic and not safe to eat or use in medicine, except maybe the unicorns, but you don't want to harvest anything from a unicorn because the entire nation would hunt you down,
Says Perrin.
What's so special about a unicorn?
Asks Kator.
Unicorns are beautiful and majestic creatures. I can show you if we are ever there,
I can show you right now. I can turn into a unicorn.
says Nix.
You've never seen one. How could you possibly?
Perrin doesn't finish his sentence before Nix transforms himself into a four-legged hooved animal with tie-dye coloring and a single horn protruding from its forehead. The horn, instead of being straight and spiral like a narwhal horn, was curved to the right, and the grain of the bone seemed like that of a bullhorn,
Moo!
proclaimed Nix as he pranced in front of the group and struck a pose in front of Kator.
That's not a unicorn.
Exclaimed Perrin.
Okay, Nix. If I ever see something like that in the wild, I won't harvest anything from it.
Says Kator, still not sure if what he's looking at is actually a unicorn or not. The Pilgrims of Four head out and come across several badly damaged shipping containers and one intact crate. Inside, they find an armoire carved from expensive northern wood filled with imitation brand noble clothing. Nix, not being satisfied by the find, jumps inside the armoire and rifles around until he finds a small hole. He puts his little gnome finger in the hole and unexpectedly gets pricked by something sharp. As Nix turns to address the group, the only sounds that come out are ribbits. Then his body grows and transforms into that of a giant frog. Elsa moves quickly and sits on the frog, preventing it from hopping away. Jack shouts to the others to stand back so he can restrain it with a web spell. Robin runs away and hastily unlocks another door, but Elsa refuses to move, and Kator approaches the frog. Kator lays his hand on a giant frog leg and casts Lesser Restoration, and Nix turns back to normal. Still being underneath Elsa, Nix gets a face full of crotch and butt, and he scrambles to get out and stand up. Elsa laughs and walks over to the armoire with Kator. The wood elf attempts to use climbing pitons to open the hidden compartment, but fails in the attempt. Elsa uses her small but strong dwarven fingers to get into the hole and pull the false bottom up the base of the armoire. Jack comes over and opens the bag of holding, and Kator shovels thousands of coins into it with his hands. Nix sees a few pieces of shiny jewelry get shoved into the bag and gets jealous.
Hey, I want something shiny too. Give me shiny.
With unnatural calmness, Kator says,
Relax, Nix. This bag is for all of us to share.
then returns to shoveling the coins into the bag. Nix apologizes and heads over to the far side of the room to smoke some of his herbs to calm down. Perrin questions him about it, but relaxes once the smoke stops and Nix returns asking for,
At least something. Just one small thing, just for me. I found the hole after all.
How about this pewter brooch? Or this periwinkle potion?
Kator says as he pulls the two items from previous travels out of the bag.
What does the potion do?
Nix asks as he takes it from Kator. When the group explains that they don't know, Nix takes a sip, finds it tastes like the smell of roses, then chugs the entire potion. His hair becomes perfectly combed and styled. His robes magically transform into a tuxedo suit, and a small top hat appears, slanted slightly to one side on top of Nix's head.
Indubitably, I say. That potion was quite delectable. You really ought to try it sometime, especially you, Stinky.
Nix says in a posh tone indicating Perrin. Several of the Pilgrims of Four smile and try not to laugh as they finish loading the coins and proceed through the door Robin unlocked. Nix and Perrin continue their friendly bickering through the hallway. In the distance, they see a robed figure surrounded by spiders and one creature that looks like a spider. But where its head should be is the upper half of a drow elf. Perrin's eyes fill with hatred and anger, and he shouts,
Kill the drow!
And mutters the beginning of a lightning bolt incantation. Before he can finish, the robed figure points at Perrin and shouts something unintelligible, causing Perrin's spell to fail. The robed drow shouts some commands to the spiders and the drider while pointing at Perrin's staff, then runs out of the room. The spiders and drider retreat upward into the webbing, and the Pilgrims of Four quickly confirm there is no other immediate danger. Perrin wants to chase after the robed drow, saying that
They enslave people and turn them into abominations, like that drider. All the drow deserve to die. They are evil.
Nix searches through the packs that the enemies left behind as Perrin goes through the door only to be confronted by a mass of thick webbing, clearly magical in origin. Kator and Perrin see some shimmering, ethereal spiders on the other side of the magical web, and Kator says,
I think he got away. Let's regroup with the others.
and heads back to the other room. Perrin angrily burns the magical web, then remembers what happened last time and quickly casts Control Flame to ensure the fire stops after consuming the magical webs. Meanwhile, Nyx had found some foodstuffs, as well as a scroll that contained drawings of Jack's wand and Perrin's staff. He shows the scroll to Jack and asks him to read it.
Mission. Critical. Survive. It is written in a language similar to Elven, but I don't recognize most of these symbols.
As Perrin returns, Nyx shows him the scroll.
Survive, primitive, capture. I think this might be Drow language.
Primitive? I suppose that means it is referring to you, then, Stinky.
Says Nyx.
Hey, listen, you. I wear perfumes. It is you that normally smells. As soon as that potion wears off and your fake top hat is gone, you'll be back to your usual primitive self.
Says Perrin. Just before they turn to leave, ethereal spiders phase into being behind Jack, Kator, Robin, and Nyx. Jack is bitten, poisoned, and falls unconscious before he has a chance to turn around to face his opponent. Elsa reacts more quickly, pummeling one of the spiders with a flurry of blows. Before she can punch through its carapace, it becomes ethereal and skitters straight through her, passing onto the other side and attacking Nyx. Meanwhile, Nyx healed Jack back to consciousness, but couldn't remove his poison, and Perrin began using his vampiric touch spell to suck the life force out of one of the ethereal spiders. A spider bite paralyzes Kator before he can knock an arrow, and another bite poisons him. Elsa catches one of the ethereal spiders by surprise, smashing through its face and mandibles. Jack uses Witch Bolt to pop one of the ethereal spiders just as it attempts to phase shift, and Perrin finishes absorbing the life force of another, leaving the corpse to fade away. The rest of the ethereal spiders flee, and after a few moments, Kator regains the use of his limbs. Jack asks,
Can anyone cure poison, or do I have to crack open my medical kit?
I'll cure you if Nyx cures me.
offers Kator, and Nyx readily agrees.
Scholarly gentleman, esteemed wizard, and Stinky. Would you care to each examine one wall of arcane symbols for us?
Says Nyx. Perrin smirks, letting the insult roll off him, considering it a victory that Nyx had to ask him for help. Together, the wizards are able to decode part of one wall.
It appears to be some sort of enchantment on this location, making the area around it easier for phase shifting.
They try to read the other wall, but it is not a spell either of them recognizes. Jack uses the remainder of his parchment and 2 sticks of charcoal to get an etching of the arcane symbols to be deciphered next time he visits a wizard college or tutor. The room beyond the burnt magical web is covered in sand, but after testing it with a copper coin, Jack declares it is safe to walk on. In a small tunnel on the far side of the room, the Pilgrims of 4 find a collapsed floor section leading down to a dark, sandy hallway. Kator lights a torch and drops it down so they can see where they are going, and then gets to work on setting up pitons and a rope. Elsa jumps down and lands with a roll, then quickly spins to verify there are no threats in either direction of the hallway, adjusting her shirt after all the tumbling. Nyx turns into a swallow and flies downward. Perrin offers to cast Enlarge on Kator and have Kator carry him down.
It wouldn't be a significant drop if you would double your height and width.
But Kator turns him down.
I want to have a way back up in case we need it.
Jack says,
25 feet isn't too high. I can probably make it.
and jumps down, landing partially sunk into the sand and falling over onto the burning torch. He quickly frees his leg and rolls on the sand before picking up the torch and brushing himself off. Robin jumps down, sideways, sliding on the wall, then pushing off to roll in the sand.
All right, I'll just make myself big then.
Says Perrin as he swings his feet over the ledge and casts Enlarge on himself before scooting forward and dropping down. By the time Kator is down and has cut off the excess rope to store it back in his bag, Perrin's spell fades and he returns to his original height. Shortly after, the potion's effects dissipate and Nyx returns to normal. The Pilgrims of 4 walk through the winding tunnels until they come to a locked door that Robin has difficulty opening. Seeing his chance, Jack asks everyone to stand aside and casts knock. The door pangs loudly and then swings open, revealing piles of corpses and venting the smell of decomposing flesh. Several ghouls and a ghast stand up and slowly turn toward the door. Before the monsters can move, Perrin casts Ice Knife, covering half of them with ice and tearing off pieces of loose flesh. Kaitor backs up a few steps and shoots an arrow that almost appears to compress the air in front of it with its astonishing speed. The arrow catches the ghast on the upper lip and launches the upper half of the skull 50 feet backward, where the arrow embeds itself in the wall, holding the flesh and bone aloft. Another arrow hits the arm of a ghoul, and Elsa targets that ghoul with a thrown shot glass, which cracks through the cheekbone and blasts out the other side, carrying most the brains with it. Jack, struggling to maintain focus through his ringing ears, casts magic missile with his eyes closed, opening them to see another ghoul ripped to pieces by the magical blasts. Robin swallows her fear and runs forward past the others, using her daggers to stab through the eye and temple of another ghoul. Perrin sends a controlled blast of fire, burning another monster, seeing its eyes pop and brains leak out of its ears and mouth. The Pilgrims of 4 catch their breath and patiently observe the piles of corpses for movement for several minutes before dropping their guard and searching the clothing of the corpses for money and items.
You know, Cater, we really should give that Pearl of Spell recharge to Perrin. He's got more of the big extravagant spells than either of us,
Says Jack.
That's a good point, but it doesn't respond until the holder spends a day with it, and it can only be used once per day. I might as well use it once more before handing it off. Plus, I feel a little under the weather. Do I look pale? You look pale. Are you poisoned?
Says Kaitor. Jack says,
Now that you mention it, Nix, can you help again?
I'm all spent, actually, until I sleep and recover. Do we have any medical kits? I can help if you have one.
I have one. Does anyone else?
asks Jack. The Pilgrims all shake their heads. Kaitor uses the pearl to recharge his lesser restoration and cure his poison, and then hands it to Perrin. Nix and Jack fiddle with the bottles and ointments inside the medical kit until Nix remembers which combination is needed to cure poison. Perrin creates a new extra-dimensional dwelling in a small crescent hallway attached to the room, giving them shelter from the stench and a safe place to sleep. Perrin configures the dwelling to have a separate room for Jack to recover in. Nix joins Jack in the small room and meditates by smoking from his pipe before going to sleep.